with the All-Star game specifically, it's just a mentality that these players are gonna have to change. I think when they had the target scores and stuff like that, I think that was a way to get players to play hard. To be
Yeah.
honest, I really don't know why they changed it up, to be honest. Um, and I think also like the player in me understands why these guys are kind of just out there. They don't want to get hurt. They
Yeah.
probably just flew in, you know what I'm saying, a day or so
Yeah.
ago. They don't really get that true break. And the biggest thing I hear, even with the Super Bowl, I heard players talk about it's not the game or the preparation for the game that really drains them. It's like the media coverage and everything that they have to do. So All-Star Week, even LeBron, I think they inside the NBA on TNT had LeBron up there talking. He was talking about how it's a lot, just the media coverage, and I know all that is part of it, and you're expected to do that, which they do a great job. But I think that's what probably really gets them to really feel like it's not that much of a break. So when they get out on that court, they're just they know people are gonna be happy to see their favorite players play, and I'm sure they would love to play hard every game, but I think to a certain level, it is kind of demanding. And like I said, even the Super Bowl, they said that takes more energy out of you than the actual game does. And that's the Super Bowl those players are talking about. So for an All-Star game, if the media is draining you and all that stuff, and it's the game that doesn't count, because also players get hurt in the All-Star game, they're like, man, why are they playing so hard in a meaningless game? And I think there's a lot of sides to it. Like the fan in me is very, very disappointed each year where it's not competitive and they're not playing hard, and I find it not entertaining. But the player side of me can understand it. So I don't think the media coverage and all that was quite the same back then in those years. I think it has ramped up a lot because you have so many media outlets, so many social media outlets, and all those different things. You got to talk to this person to that person. You're trying to keep your PR up and things of that nature. So I think I don't know, maybe if that stuff wasn't as prevalent and the players weren't required to do so much, maybe they could put more toward the game if you just give them like a day or maybe a day or two to just really relax and truly not have to do any NBA type related stuff. Maybe make the break longer, give them 2 days in between the All-Star game instead of going straight
Mm-hmm.
to the All-Star. I think there's a lot of things on both parts that could be done to help us get a better product because it is a lot that's demanded of these players for this quote unquote break, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, like I said before, I get it. We played basketball before, and it reminds me of, when we would play pickup basketball, you and me, we played college ball. And when you went to those runs, they were pretty much competitive, especially before your season came up, because you're trying to compete, you're trying to get better, you're trying to prove some stuff to the guys before the season. After the season, they were still competitive, but if you had a buddy, if you're at home during the summer and you had a buddy call you up, right? And
mhm.
he's like, I got some guys coming to the gym. You want to run? Yeah, and you get them there. Usually those kind of pickup games, first few might be, pretty good. And it also depends on who you playing with. But
Yeah.
those middle ones to the end, like you would get a lot of people leaking out, not as much defense being played and things like that
Hmm.
happening. And even by the end, like the last game, people would be like, hey, bro, this is the last game. Let's actually go hard. It's, kind of like a coin flip if it's really going to be
Yeah.
tough. And sometimes that last game players would go hard, but sometimes it'll just be like the first few possessions, you go hard and then the last kind of falls off. But um like that's kind of what it reminds me of. And I definitely get it, man. Like as players, it's supposed to be a break and you don't want to get hurt. I get it. I actually think probably having 2 days extra after, just extend it to, all right, we don't even play this next week. We'll play the week after the
Yeah.
All-Star break, because that gives, I think, the players a little bit more time to actually recalibrate and stuff versus giving it to them before. And I get it. But going back to previous generations like MJ, Kobe, Tim Duncan, like KG, like they played in it and they didn't miss many games during the regular
Yeah.
season. So, and I get it. We are more advanced now. We understand like resting people and wanting to preserve your body for the playoffs. And this is not to say that it won't ever happen that a player will get injured in the All-Star game. And we all pray and hope that that doesn't happen. But when they were playing hard in it, I don't remember people getting hurt in the game. Like there's a way to play with a little bit more intensity and competitiveness without putting players in danger of getting hurt. So
Yeah,
and players
definitely.
at the highest level understand how to do that.
Hmm.
So we're not saying go out there and be reckless. We're not saying go out there and play like you're playing in the NBA finals. We're just saying at least play a little bit less than regular season. You know what I mean? Like we get it's an exhibition game. You don't have to
Yeah.
go like super hard, but
Some
just give
teams in
us
the regular
something.
season be chilling.
Yeah, just give us something, just give us a little bit of something. And it was just frustrating to see people trotting up and down the floor. And I
Hmm.
like the games are on YouTube, y'all. Like go back and watch the early 2000 games when AI and Jason Kidd were in the game. Like they were pushing the ball up and down the floor. You're running back on defense. Like it's not super high intense basketball, but you see the effort. You
Hmm.
see them going up and down.
Yeah,
It's
they trying to
actually
win.
closer. Yeah, it's actually closer to their like back then. The All Star game is closer to the regular season games back
Yeah.
then than this All Star game currently is close to this era's regular season game. So
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
just frustrating as a fan to watch it.
And also, I think the fact that this was the first year ever that 200 points was scored, I think that's what also made it pretty bad because, like I said, I saw a lot of times where the West was just letting the East like literally moving out the way and just sitting there watching. Definitely
Yeah,
on both teams. Now, if somebody's ahead of you and they got full head of steam and you're trotting behind them, don't go for no chase down or nothing like that. But
yeah,
if you're in front of the
yeah,
guy, like make them shoot over you. You ain't gotta jump, just like stand there. You know what I'm saying? Just at least
exactly.
put your arm in front of their face so they can't see the rim. And it's just things like that that we're asking, and not just olaying it on defense every time, and actually making somebody try to get to a shot. You ain't got to foul them. You ain't got to body them up. You ain't got to do nothing crazy. Like Trevor said, all you got to do is really just at least be there, be a presence, let them know that somebody is guarding them. That's pretty much all we're asking for. And the fact that the East was able to score 200 points. Now, granted, Dame did go crazy. He was hitting a lot of shots from three, but
Yeah,
even those were
yeah,
just like gimmies, like wide open,
yeah,
nobody contesting really. And this is probably the worst I've ever seen it, to be honest, because it
yeah.
wasn't even a competitive game. It really wasn't. So
It was just yeah, it was just seeing them shoot long shots and whoever had the most.
yeah, to be
Yeah.
honest, I think your best bet is to go back to the format that they just had. I thought it was fairly successful in the
Mm,
past few years. At least when it got down to that target score, you saw teams really compete. That first
mhm.
year when it was I forgot which city it was in, but I think that first year they did the target score, I think it was actually pretty good. I think there's a better way of them doing it. And I think that's another aspect to this too. Like your biggest stars are still LeBron, KD, Steph, and they're your older guys now. So they're not really trying to, do all that during the All-Star game, especially a guy like LeBron. And I feel like since they're the biggest stars, I think does kind of have a trickle down effect. But if the NBA did a better job of trying to pass the torch on to another star like Anthony Edwards or somebody like that instead of clinging on to LeBron and Steph still. I think that it would give those guys more power to set that standard to your younger guys that can go up and down the floor and have the energy to play hard in an all-star game. I think that's another aspect that's not really thought of because our older guys are still the ones that's plastered everywhere, being seen as the stars, and they're getting to that point in their career where they can't just go up and down the court. So it's like, of course people are gonna follow that same trend. But if you have those younger guys that are the guys and the NBA gives them those powers, I'm sure they could set the standard and bring some more excitement to this All-Star game. So I think it's a lot of aspects that have to be executed right. And I don't think it's just the players. I think it's also the league. Like I don't know if this format should have really been changed Like to
Ah,
be honest, like wasn't that format with the target score working? And I know maybe then the captains and
it
everything
was
wasn't that working?
better. It was better. So I actually went back and watched a few 90s games and I watched like all the 2000s games up until this point. And y'all can go watch it on YouTube. I would actually recommend it. I think up until like 2012, 13, you don't get full games. You have to get like highlights and things like that. But just go back and watch them. So I saw up until like from 2000 up until like 2011, maybe 2012, you can kind of see the shift because it's also, back in the early 2000s, you had bigs that really weren't shooting, so everybody was in the paint, so you get more contests a little bit. So I get that. Now you hit like 2011, 12, you get more big space on the floor, so the paint is going to be open. So if you get by somebody, it's probably going to be open dunks. They got fast breaks and things like that. And then once you start getting closer to 2020, so I remember I watched it. It's 2018. That was a really good one. That was like the first year you got the captains. I think it was LeBron versus Steph, and that was a good game. It was actually pretty competitive throughout the whole thing for an All-Star game. Then the next one, I think, was 2020. That's when the target score came into play and everything happened with Kobe and Gigi and everyone else that
Yeah,
was
they
on
had a
the
reason to play.
helicopter. Yeah, it was kind of that, like trying to play for them. So that was a really good one. That's when Giannis blocked LeBron on the thing and that like that whole game.
Mm.
And since then, you might get some good games here and there, but it really hasn't been that great, to be honest with you. It's been like this kind of slow decline with a few like spikes, but it's just hasn't been that great for most of the 2020s. And I definitely see where you're coming from a city standpoint, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the players and will they choose to compete on the floor? I think that's what it comes down to because I get, you set the table and you set the stage. And I
Hmm.
think from a All-Star weekend as a whole, in terms of all the events that go on, yeah, it would be better to have it in LA versus in Indiana. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, the product on the court is the product on the court. So if they decide, and I'm not trying to bash the players because I think it's really is on the players because the NBA wants those games to be competitive. They try and do different things to make those games competitive. But and again, I'm not trying to bash the players, but at the end of the day, that's who it relies on. And if they put forth an effort that shows that they really don't care about it, that's cool. But again, just don't get upset when we say the older All-Star games were better, and don't get
Yeah, I
upset when
understand that.
we call you out on it. That's just
Hmm.
how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it ultimately does come down to those players, and I do agree with you there. So I guess the real answer to the question about what the NBA can do to make them play better is really nothing, because, like we're
Yeah,
saying, like
that's really what
it's
it
the
is.
players. So,
Yeah.
but I do think there are some aspects that could probably help a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, I wouldn't know. I'm not an NBA player. I'm not backstage. I'm not in that whole process of the whole week of the day to day of an all star. So all we can do is hope for it to get better, but we can, dissect what we see on the court.